Seekers. While with another band called Cradle, she was spotted by record producer Mickey Most, who brought her to England. That was 40 million records ago. Apart from music, she's also played the part of Leather Tuscadero opposite the Fonz in the TV series Happy Days. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Suzi Quatro. When you were starting off, as I say, been in it since you were 14 in the business, do you have a different image than the one we've come accustomed to, now the leather bit and all that?
Possibly, because we used to have to wear mini skirts at first, which I used to hate. I thought they were diabolical. I always was a tomboy, you see, mainly, and my first band was an all-girl band, and so to get the work, they expect you to dress up like women to bring the crowds in, you see.
Yes. But how distinctive then is this appearance, is the leather gear and the trousers and all that sort of thing? I mean, is that a creation of a record producer, or is it you yourself?
I really don't think the smartest record producer in the world could ever create this, because it's just too strange. I mean, I always fought against the establishment every step of the way. I wanted to be me, and I didn't care how long it took to make it. I just wanted to be myself.
Well, why was that, though? Because you came from a very comfortable home background, didn't you?
Yeah, we grew up in a nice suburb of Detroit. You know, the car factory there, called Grosse Pointe, where all the sort of rich people live and everything. And maybe that's why, because I hated that. I used to like to say I'm from Detroit, and if I didn't like to say I'm from Grosse Pointe, because people would go, ooh, you know, money.
And did this thing about having a uniform in those days, did that get into any trouble then? I mean, at school, I mean, presumably you'd have to wear a proper school uniform with your little frock and all that sort of thing.
Little frock?
Yeah.
Not English.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think now. I used to get in trouble regularly. First of all, for having my ears pierced, which wasn't allowed. Then I bought ankle boots. You remember ankle boots? Little. You never wore them? What about little frocks? And I got in trouble for that, and I got in trouble for having my skirts too short. We had a dean of women. Do you have them here?
Well, the equivalent of, I would imagine,
and
yeah.
She used to make you kneel on the floor and see if your skirt touched the floor as you were kneeling. Miss Holzel. Doesn't that sound right, Miss Holzel?
What did she do if it didn't?
Well, you used to get expelled. Her favorite one was making you stand on a little tiny square in the office.
You got tattooed as well, didn't you?
Yeah, oh yeah.
When do you get tattooed?
You see?
There, yeah, it's a star. When did that happen?
I was 17. I was down doing a gig somewhere, and a friend of mine had a rose here on her thumb, and I always tried to impress her that I was as tough as her, so she said, I got this tattoo, and I went, yeah, well, show me where it is. And I went down there, and the guy that did it was drunk. And isn't that wrong? I was supposed to be drunk, wasn't I? And he was supposed to be sober. Well, he had it all wrong. And the star's actually crooked. And also, you know, when the scab comes up when it's healing, you know, you're supposed to leave it alone. Well, I scratched it, and there's half the color missing as well. But it is really a nice tattoo, lovely, isn't it?
Yes, satisfactory, yes. Now, let me give you you haven't got any hidden tattoos, have you, Clive?
He's got a battleship on his chest. I saw in the dressing room.
I'm just thinking, when you consider what that drunken tattooist could have done.
I was looking forward to that.
Let's talk a little bit about your appearance on stage. You're described in one of the quotes I picked up from the cuttings as a snarling, spitting, wildcat sexuality on stage. That's what you think, is it?
Well, it's always terrible to read descriptions of yourself. I am an energetic performer, and I guess that's probably right.
Do you get a buzz out of appearing on stage?
That's the main buzz I do get. You know, like if you can still do it after 16 years and still love it and not get tired of the whole feeling, you know, when the audience is going and you're going. I mean, I was riding into town the other day, and they were playing the charts on the radio, all the hit records. We were number 7 or something, and the guy says, and this is Suzi Quatro's new record, number 7. And I rolled down the window to the guy next to me, right? And I went, that's me on the radio! And he just kind of looked over, he didn't know who I was. But see, that's what I mean. It's always the same. You still get a big thrill.
But is it more difficult for a woman to succeed in the rock industry?
In some ways. It depends on
what
you mean.
ways? Well, I mean, no, succeed in the proper sense of going to the top.
Yes, I know. What do you think I'm thinking about? Back to his subject now, aren't we? It's easy when you're starting out to get work. with men. When you're in a male band, it's not so unusual, and they find it hard to get gigs. Women, we always were booked everywhere. But to get past the point where people don't think of you as a novelty and accept you as a serious musician, that's the difficult part. And that's for yourself to feel that way and for other people to treat you that way. You have to really fight for it.
Mm-hmm. And why have the all-girl bands, a couple of which you appeared in, why have they never, ever had a success in the rock scene? I mean, they've been around, but they've just come along and been a gimmick, it seemed, and disappeared. Why is that?
It's difficult. It's, I always feel like I should side with all the women when I say this, but all my early bands were all women. Most of the girls we lost along the way because they got bored with it, or they didn't want to take time out for the dating, or they wanted to do something else, I mean, I gave up most of my early life to the business, and a lot of women aren't prepared to do that. Rightly so, probably. I mean, very few make it.
What about the reaction of women, not other women musicians, but women fans generally, well, women particularly, to you? I mean, what kind of reaction do you get from them?
It's mostly, I got to put my foot up. I'm always more comfortable, I think.
Makes that would help.
Yeah, it's always, I get a lot of letters from girls, and they're usually like, they identify with me. A lot of them, like, I want to be like you are, and I want to rock and roll, and I want to do the same thing. I got a letter from a mother one time, a very sweet letter, and it said, my daughter's got 1 year left of school, and she wants to quit now and become another Suzi Quatro, and could you please write to me and write to her and tell her not to do it? So and did I? I wrote a letter, and I said to the girl, if you're absolutely 150% sure that this is what you want to do with your life, go for it. If you have any doubts at all, spend the extra year in school.
But, I mean, how dangerous a business is it to get into in any case, whether it be a man or a woman?
Dangerous? It's dangerous if you haven't got your feet on the ground, because then the pressure of being an image. In this business, I always compare it with the acting profession because you're dealing with characters. But in the acting profession, you can take your character when you're done with a movie and put it away. But in this business, this is the image, and you can't put it away. I mean, I go into the local shops and people expect me to whack them with a chain or something, And that's just not what I'm all about. But I make sure that my private life has that balance, so I do keep my feet on the ground. I refuse to be sucked into anything.
And yet, of course, it claims its casualties. It seems as if the industry has to have a sacrifice every so often, doesn't it? I mean, you can think through the past 10 years, there they are, the sort of big names. How do you avoid falling into that trap?
You just...
Or destroying yourself?
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. I mean, I went, I'm always honest about everything. We had our first hit record in '73. And all of a sudden I woke up in the morning and people were on the phone wanting to speak to me. And I was amazed. I thought, wow, they want to know my opinion. And do I have any opinions? That was the next question. And for 2 weeks, I remember, like from the Monday to 2 weeks later, the following Monday, I thought I was great. Looked in the mirror and I was thinking, all of a sudden I become pretty. All of a sudden I was tall. I got your problem as well. All of a sudden I had a big chest. Well, I thought, I've made it, So for 2 weeks, and my old man, he just didn't say anything. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I was sitting across from him at the table, and he went, welcome home. That was it.
Yeah.
Same idiot I always was. No different.
That's what you keep telling yourself.
Yeah, but you have to go through that. You have to pass through that. You have to be honest. I mean, you must go through it, otherwise it stays with you.
Well, I mean, one of the problems, it seems to me, of course, with the rock industry is that the stardom happens suddenly, and it happens to young, immature people in the main, and it's a colossal kind of stardom too. I mean, they are the superstars of today. It's no longer the movie stars or whatever. It's a very, very difficult thing to cope with. I mean, you must be exceptional in that you could cope with it.
Well, maybe I was lucky in the way that I had such a nice upbringing. I had a father who was a musician and my mother who used to sing, and they started me on that career so young that I was ready for it. My dad had a great quote to me. He said, okay, now I know you're going to go into the business for good. He said, just remember that 90% of it is bull and the other 10% you can believe. Yeah. And I stuck by that, and he was usually right.
Yeah, but the rock history of rock is still littered with the corpses of performers who had nice upbringings. Mainly because of the weird exotic substances they started shooting into themselves.
Yeah, I know.
Do you do any of that?
No.
There's a question there.
I don't know. I did, under a doctor's supervision one time, smoke marijuana.
What happened?
No, I didn't actually. No, I did. But that's always the joke line, under a doctor's supervision, of course, But, yeah, right. I did try it when I was like 16. It was on every street corner. But to be quite honest about it, that controls me, and I don't like it. So with the drink, if I'm having a drink, if I want to relax, I can control how high I'm getting by how much I drink. With anything else, you can't, because you're there, and that's finished. And I don't like that. I like to be in control.
But do you disapprove of it in other people?
well, I mean, it's very widespread now, isn't it? I think a lot of people smoke. If you can handle it, no. But then again, there should be definitely, you should keep it away from youngsters. Because what can you handle when you're young? You can't handle anything, can you? You just go for it to extremes.
Who were your musical heroes as a child, Clive? I mean, did you have the rock and rollers? Obviously,
I go back practically to Debussy, but I can remember the big change just the way you can, because the biggest change there ever was in popular music happened right in the middle of the 50s.
Sure.
I mean, one day we were listening to Guy Mitchell singing "Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes," and at best that was the big hit number, the one with the beat. And you'd be hearing Doris Day and people like that, and then suddenly there was this thing. I remember the first Elvis Presley single, as if it was...
Yay!
I remember.
All right.
Yeah,
He's the best.
On Australian radio, they called him Elvis Presley for the first time.
For the first 10 years.
And I remember loving rock and roll. Loving it. I saw Dave Knock the Rock and Rock Around the Clock about 10 times each. And it never occurred to me that this stuff was important. I liked it very much without thinking it was important. I thought jazz was important. I was very religious about jazz, and I used to preach a lot about the superiority of black jazz to white jazz and all that stuff. And I could name the personnel of Jelly Roll Morton's bands. Every band. I could name everybody in it, all this stuff. But all the time, I think I loved rock and roll more. And it took me a long, long time to realize that.
Did it give you that buzz?
No, it gives me that buzz now.
Does it give you that too, Michael? You know, where it just shoots up your backbone?
Not rock and roll, isn't it?
No, you don't.
No,
you don't like rock and roll?
No, I don't dislike it. I mean, it just doesn't give me a huge... I mean, it's all right, but if you ask me what my choice in music is, I mean, mine's still very much rooted in jazz. I'm very much in big band jazz and then that sort of thing. I mean, I like all music.
He's apologizing.
I'm not apologizing. Not at all. But I mean, it begs the question, of course. I mean, how important? I mean, jazz was only important to me as a means of leisure, as a means of entertainment. I never give it any other significance beyond that. It seems to me that where rock and roll is different is that all kinds of people, and some of the musicians themselves, put all kinds of different layers on it. I mean, it would seem to me that it's become a kind of crusade, almost.
Yeah,
it has a significance to children beyond that which I would have suspected of being.
Well, it was only supposed to be the alternative, wasn't it, originally, so the young people could have something to listen to.
It was part of what was considered in the 60s to be an entire revolution. Most of that revolution was rhetoric and it all faded away. I remember that people felt like that. I never quite felt like that because I like jazz too, and I like classical music.
Jazz.
Nowadays I listen to much more classical music because the heyday in the blood is tame. I mean, I feel a bit ridiculous jumping out of my chair and bobbing around to all those Elvis Presley sound records. I've still got them all there. And all my Buddy Holly records, they're all there, they're all intact.
The other thing too, of course, that you must be aware of as a performer is that it's a young industry, isn't it, basically?
The majority of it is, yeah. But it does span very wide now.
Well, that's true. If you take Jagger at one end,
Yeah.
how old Jagger now? He's what, late 30s or so?
No, he's 74.
74, is he going on to 90, yeah. But I mean, you've been on the road now 16 years. Do you ever lose your appetite for that? I mean, do you feel the appetite waning when you think of another concert tour coming up?
The only thing that gets tedious is the actually traveling, because I hate flying, and I don't look forward to that at all. But I never ever get tired of the gigs. I never will. The people are going to have to retire me, because I'm not going to retire them.
Well, you've got more concert tours coming up. You've got a record out, an album, and a single as well. What about the future outside of the record industry, or outside of music? Because in fact, you've appeared, as I said, on Happy Days with Henry Winkler. Does acting figure at all in the future?
Yeah, in fact, I want to get into something. We've been looking at scripts for about 6 months now. You know, it's very difficult to find something that you really want to do. I mean, I was so lucky that my first ever acting job was such a good show, and it was really tailor-made for me, that I don't want to do a bad movie now. I want to do something very good, so we're looking into that.
Well, talk to Mr. James. He's casting and
You got a part for me in your movie?
You could play Clive. You could play Clive, and it's about 12.
Is my head all right?
You could play my first girlfriend if you could take the pace. I just spent a hell of a lot of time up one end of the dance hall.
It's Suzi Quatro for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.